This was actually part of a longer email relating to other parts of the site, but I just wanted to read this excerpt from it because I thought it was kind of nice. Also, I wanted to say that I've been listening to the podcast a lot lately. I have like an hour and a half drive to and from work each day, so podcasts. And I think it's been really coming on nice lately, especially the last dozen or so. It's sounding great. Listening to the podcast in the car makes me feel like I almost have friends.
We love you.
Almost.
I just thought that was a really sweet thing for that person to say.
Yeah.
So thank you, anonymous GameCola reader / writer.
Thanks.
Next, there was a comment on the YouTube page I wanted to just briefly discuss. This is from Arglefumph, who is actually Michael Gray.
I can edit that out.
This is from Arglefumph, period. He was talking about the we discussed episodic gaming in the last podcast. He wants to know, can the Phoenix Wright games be considered episodic? I think the second one can, but I'm not so sure about the others. And I would disagree about that. I think when you're talking about an episodic game specifically, you're talking about a game that has been really broken up into a bunch of different chunks, and each chunk is sold separately as its own game. Whereas with, for example, the second Phoenix Wright game, it is broken up into those different chunks, but they're all still like one package. They're all still one game.
But that just has to do with the business model of it, of breaking it up and selling it separately. The Phoenix Wright games are broken up into episodes, and if you buy the CD or the DVD package of Tales of Monkey Island or Sam & Max or what have you, those, the way you're buying them, are still broken up into episodes that are as related or unrelated to each other as any of the Phoenix Wright episodes. So if you look at the game as a whole and completely ignore the way that it's being sold piece by piece or not being sold piece by piece, then they're both episodic games, very similar to each other.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of the term episodic, and I could be wrong, is that's actually what it's describing, is the business model of releasing it in chunks at every X number of months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe like Tales of Monkey Island right now might not even be considered an episodic game anymore. It was released episodically, but now it's just a game.
I'd say it probably still is. It was originally supposed to be episodic. I don't think it stops being episodic once they put it all in a disc. It's just that there's now another way to buy them.
Okay.
But I think it does. It just really refers to that business model.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense
says
that
we're both right.
I mean, just looking at the term, it would make sense to say that Phoenix Wright is an episodic game. I mean, it is clearly broken up into specific episodes, but I do think that it's the release schedule that makes it episodic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyway, one more comment. This is from Facebook user Justin. This is a comment on our podcast when I posted it onto Facebook. First.
Okay.
That's posted by gc.net on the gc.net channel.
I actually have a reason that I mentioned this, and that is because I could be wrong, but I'm not sure we have ever gotten a first comment before.
I don't think we have.
So he's the first in many, many ways.
I think Justin, you are the first. So congratulations.
Wow.
That must be really hard to get, too, because I think in just seconds after we put those up, there's, 500 or so comments?
Usually.
On other videos on the internet.
I believe we've crashed Facebook a few times.
Once or twice.
We actually did crash GameCola.net a couple weeks ago when we had too many users. When LucasArts mentioned us in a tweet, we got flooded and the server went down.
Awesome.
Yikes.
Not awesome for the server going down, but awesome for the increase in
that was
hits.
pretty cool. They were linking to our year-end awards article.
Oh, I should have bought some ad space there.
39 cents.
They were very happy that we said Monkey Island 2 was the best remake. So that's the comments. I think Jetty mentioned this before. Remind me again how people can get in touch with us if they want to say anything, tell us anything about the show.
Leave a comment on the post.
Well, Paul, there are many ways that you can comment on the GameCola podcast. You can email
Leave a comment
us.
on the post.
I think Nathaniel is suggesting that we should move on. Email podcast@gamecola.net. All right, now someone give us a topic. Nathaniel.
Posting comments on posts. Actually, here's one that I completely made up as soon as we were starting to talk about the topics that we might have for the podcast. What game or games do you think would have been better as a totally different genre?
Personally, I think King's Quest VIII would have been a lot better if it was an adventure game. I might also say the same thing about Monkey Island 4, but not as much.
In fact, I would go as far as to say we could probably say any video game, and you'd agree.
Well, King's Quest at least is supposed to be an adventure game. Then the 8th one was like, I only played, an hour of it. I believe it was about walking around hitting chickens with swords.
As much as I'm into that.
Hey, it's great in Zelda, but games that would be better if they were a different genre.
And the reason I bring this up is when I played Final Fantasy VIII, and I feel like I've talked about Final Fantasy VIII on the podcast before. I'm not the world's biggest Final Fantasy fan, but I still play them anyhow, which is actually another topic of games that you play and you're not sure why you keep playing them. But I digress. Final Fantasy VIII, I thought, would be not as good as an RPG. It would be much better as an action-based adventure game, because there were so many sections that had the one that I'm thinking of in particular is where you're hanging in the air, like you're dangling from something. I don't remember what, a balloon or a floating hog. I can't even think of what it is. And there's a guard or a villain. You're hanging in the air with a bad guy, and you're just punching and kicking each other. And this was this sort of action-adventure scene, kind of like the end of Space Quest 3. You've got this robot battle where you're just sort of rock'em sock'em robots punching each other. And that's the kind of thing that I was thinking of. I said, this doesn't belong in an RPG. This would be much better as an adventure game. And there were several, just the way Final Fantasy VIII was visually, a lot of the scenes looked like some of the classier adventure games. Just the sort of the look of it, the hand-drawn art scanned in background kind of a feel to it. And I kept getting this vibe that, yeah, we can customize our characters and we fight all these random battles, but so much of this would be better as an action-y adventure game.
Well, but I think that can kind of be said about any turn-based RPG in modern times. You could probably have a more fun game if it was action-based as opposed to turn-based.
Well, no, that's not what I mean, though. Not action-based as in Tales of Symphonia, for example, where it's just active time, you're button mashing, not where it's part fighter that's combined with RPG elements, but I mean action game sort of where you have, I don't know, like fighting-oriented Mario Party mini-games as the standard. Gemini Rue is a perfect example of something that has an action slant to the adventure game. Some of you may recall that I just reviewed this game on GameCola not too long ago called Gemini Rue, and it is a new adventure game that is styled as some of the adventure games of the 90s, and it's standard point-and-click adventure game, and the difference is that there is gun combat where you duck behind cover and then you peek out and then fire at enemies or get your head blown off. And this is an action-oriented section that is not something that you would typically have in an RPG. You wouldn't have Luca ducking behind a barrel and then popping out and firing a few shots and, holding your breath for a headshot or anything like that. It would flow differently in an RPG, but sort of action challenges with adventuring between them. That's what I'm talking about.
Interesting. The things they do with video games these days.
The things they don't do with video games these days.
It's true. The silence I will be cutting out of the podcast.
Hooray!
I don't know.
I don't really... almost done.
I don't have anything interesting to say. All I have are pithy things like I think all turn-based RPGs would be better if they were more action-y, but that doesn't really help the discussion very much.
And I think I already said that.
Paul, the difference is that turn-based, if it's turn-based done well with enemies that aren't just the same enemy over and over again, if there's actually another reason why I like Chrono Trigger is that there's enough variation in the enemies that it doesn't feel like you're doing the same battle every 5 seconds. But with turn-based, with turn-based,
I have never played a game with turn-based combat that I found engaging.
That's fine, but
that's a problem with me
tactics
personally.
And strategy for the turn-based to make be any fun. Paul.
I don't know. I think, and this isn't really what your topic is anymore, but what I dislike the most is not even so much the battles. Like I usually do get into the boss battles in turn-based RPGs, but it's just having to fight a little tiny battle every 10 seconds that drives me nuts.
That is the biggest complaint that
So
people
that's
have
that's
about the
actually something
turn-based
great
games.
that Chrono Trigger did in Earthbound too, which we were talking about a little earlier, is that it's a lot easier to avoid the little dinky encounters if you don't want to do them.
Yeah, because they're physically there. You can actually avoid them if you want.
Yeah.
And Earthbound is kind enough that if you're super strong and they're super weak, they're not going to waste your time. They just immediately say you win.
And Earthbound gives you the extra advantage. You can use a skip sandwich to run faster, or even use the teleport spell to your advantage to swing around people. Yeah, and then you swing around them and then catch them by surprise and beat them over the head in one hit, kill them. So there's additional fun strategy that you can have if you're really goofing around with it.
Well, back to the topic. If I thought of one. I thought of a game that would be better if it switched genres, and I'm thinking Tetris should be a first-person shooter.
Well, I mean, really, everything should be a first-person shooter. Why do we even play other games?
Why do we even bother?
I'm just kidding. My bad, Chad.
Super Star Wars should have been a turn-based RPG. I always wanted a Star Wars turn-based RPG because I thought the storyline would fit it so well.
Well, you've got Knights of the Old Republic.
I guess
Wait,
that is.
Does that count as turn-based combat? Because I love that game.
Totally does.
Does it? That was still a little more actiony, though.
Well,
yeah,
no, it's a little more actiony, but it happens in real time. It's not just I'm mashing buttons and attacking, again, like Tales of Symphonia, which is one of the only action RPGs I've ever played. But it is turn-based. You do need to wait for someone to do another thing. It just happens very quickly. There's not a large wait time.
I liked that one. That they did it well. Whatever they did in that one, I don't remember. It's been years, but I very much enjoyed that game.
Well, what they did with Knights of the Old Republic was they gave you the option to pause after every turn so you could strategize, or just let your players run out on autopilot and then occasionally tell them, oh, wait, you should throw a grenade. No, really, throw a grenade. Okay, stop shooting at him. Throw a grenade. You can do that. Anyone else have any exciting changes in genre to make? No, okay. So then my other topic, while we're not talking about anything in particular, was games that you keep playing even though you know you really don't want to waste your time on this game anymore.
That's like every game I play. But I always invest so much time into it at first before I realize I don't like it that I'm like, well, hell, I can't just stop it.
Exactly the same way.
Yeah, you get to that point where you're like, oh God, I'm not having fun, but I'm so far. I just want to see how the stupid game ends. I just had that problem. I was playing this FMV indie game on Xbox called Sword and Hammer, where it had a very Heavy Rain-esque gameplay where it would just flash on the screen what button you had to push, and then you had to push it. But the great thing about this game was it was live-action FMV. They recorded, I believe, maybe 4 different scenes and then looped them. So I would have a sword fight, and I'd have to push X and then Y and then B, and then I would win. And then it would show me the same exact sword fight, and then I'd have to do it again. But I got like halfway through that game, and I was like, "This is the worst thing I've ever played in my life. This is the opposite of fun." But I've already spent 10 minutes on this game. I need to see how it ends. And then I died, and then I decided not to.
Yeah, I have an unfortunate combination of needing to see the end of crappy games, but also a really poor attention span. So I'll be like, yeah, I want to finish that game. I want to finish it, even though I don't. But then I won't. So I don't even know. I guess it works out in my advantage.
It's good for me because I ultimately become a better versed, a more well-versed gamer by playing through these games, because otherwise I'd just have this whole huge backlog of games that I'd gotten 10, 20, 30 minutes into and just left, and so I'd keep breezing through things and never actually have enough material played for me to talk competently about any of the games that I'd sort of played.
I've been forcing myself to play more because that's exactly what I do. I've been forcing myself to play like maybe 1 or 2 games at a time and then move on once I beat one.